Rome once believed kings were chosen by destiny, that a crown meant protection, that obedience meant stability, but one king shattered that illusion. The streets grew silent, the Senate lost its voice. Fear ruled every home. Whispers replaced truth, justice became a weapon, power became cruelty, and then one crime pushed Rome beyond patience. A single act of tyranny ignited a fury so powerful that an entire nation swore it would never bow to a king again. This is the story of the ruler whose brutality destroyed monarchy forever. The moment when Rome chose rebellion over obedience and freedom over fear. Chapter 1. The Rise of a Tyrant. Rome did not fall into tyranny overnight. It slid into it through ambition, fear, and betrayal. The last king of Rome, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, did not inherit his crown peacefully, so he seized it through blood. Tarquin was the son of the previous king, but he lacked patience and restraint. He believed power was something taken, not granted. When opportunity appeared, he acted ruthlessly. With armed supporters, he assassinated the sitting king and removed rivals without mercy. The crown became his, not through law, not through public approval, but through force. From the first day of his rule, Tarquin rejected Rome's traditional balance of power. Earlier, kings had consulted the Senate, respected noble families, and governed through cooperation. Tarquin ignored all of it. He ruled alone. He dismissed senators who opposed him. He silenced criticism. He ruled by command instead of consensus. Rome's political system transformed quietly into a personal dictatorship. Fear replaced trust. Obedience replaced loyalty, and public discussion faded. Tarquin centralized authority aggressively. He appointed loyal supporters instead of respected leaders. He used intimidation to secure compliance. Anyone who questioned his rule risked punishment, exile, or death. The Senate became ceremonial. The people became voiceless. The king became untouchable. Yet Tarquin did not rule only through terror. He also used spectacle and grand projects to project power. Massive construction projects reshaped the city. Temples, walls, and public works that displayed royal authority and wealth. But these projects came at a cost. Heavy taxation burdened citizens. Forced labor exhausted families. Entire neighborhoods were mobilized to serve royal ambition. Pride masked exploitation. Tarquin demanded submission not only politically, but psychologically. Citizens learned to speak carefully, trust cautiously, and hide resentment behind obedience. The city grew tense, quiet, watchful. Even Rome's noble families, once powerful, felt humiliated. Their influence vanished. Their advice was ignored. Their dignity eroded. The monarchy no longer felt like leadership. It felt like occupation. Tarquin's arrogance deepened with time. Success convinced him that resistance was impossible. He believed fear could permanently control people. He was wrong. Tyranny builds pressure quietly. Resentment does not disappear. It waits. And Rome was waiting. Chapter 2. A city living in fear. Fear became the invisible ruler of Rome. Under Tarquin the Proud, daily life transformed into quiet survival. People no longer spoke freely in marketplaces. Conversations stopped when strangers approached, for neighbors measured every word, uncertain who might report them. Silence became safety. The king ruled through intimidation rather than law. Taxes increased steadily to fund royal projects and personal luxury. Families struggled to feed themselves while wealth flowed upward toward the palace. Farmers lost land. Merchants paid bribes for protection. Debt spread quietly through the lower classes. Forced labor became routine. Citizens were ordered to work on massive construction projects, temples, walls, and royal monuments, without fair compensation. Men labored for months away from their families. Injuries were ignored. Complaints were punished. These projects glorified the king, but they exhausted the people. Public punishment reinforced obedience. Those accused of disloyalty faced harsh penalties. Property was seized, and families were publicly humiliated. Executions occurred without transparent trials. Justice became a weapon rather than protection. Even Rome's nobles felt trapped. Once powerful families found themselves sidelined, stripped of influence, and monitored closely. Private rivalries were replaced by collective fear. Political ambition vanished because survival mattered more than power. The Senate became powerless. Meetings continued in form, but decisions carried no authority. Senators avoided confrontation, fearing retaliation. Advice was ignored. Debate disappeared. Rome's political heart stopped beating. Social trust collapsed. Friends avoided political discussion. Communities fractured under suspicion. People learned to mask emotions behind obedience. Children grew up sensing tension without understanding its source. Religion even absorbed fear. Omens were interpreted anxiously. Priests avoided criticizing royal behavior. Public rituals continued, but faith felt hollow beneath oppression. Resentment grew silently. Whispers traveled through back alleys. Stories circulated quietly. Anger matured slowly. Tyranny rarely faces immediate rebellion. It accumulates pressure, and pressure eventually explodes. Rome was approaching that breaking point. Chapter 3. The crime that shattered the kingdom. Tyranny can endure many injustices, but some crimes pierced the soul of a nation. The spark that shattered Rome's tolerance came not from politics or taxation, but from honor, dignity, and unbearable betrayal. During a military campaign away from the city, the sons of King Tarquin boasted among themselves about whose wife was most virtuous. Proud and reckless, they decided to ride secretly back to Rome to test the truth. They found most noble households indulging in luxury and entertainment. Only one woman stood apart: Lucretia. She was working late into the night, managing her household with discipline and modesty. Her virtue became undeniable and dangerous. Among the watching princes was Sextus Tarquin, the king's son. Desire turned into obsession, power turned into entitlement. Days later, Sextus returned alone to Lucretia's home under the disguise of hospitality and royal privilege. As a guest, he was welcomed. As a prince, he was trusted. That trust was shattered. Sextus threatened Lucretia with death and dishonor if she resisted. He used fear, shame, and royal power to violate what Rome valued most: personal honor and family dignity. This was not merely a private crime, and it was an assault on Roman values themselves. Lucretia survived the attack, but not the dishonor. She summoned her husband, father, and trusted allies. With steady courage, she told them what had happened. Her voice did not tremble with fear, but with moral clarity. She demanded justice. Then, before anyone could stop her, she took her own life. Her death struck Rome like lightning. Grief transformed into rage. Silence transformed into outrage. Private suffering became public rebellion. Lucretia's body was carried through the streets. Citizens gathered. Whispers turned into cries. Tears turned into fury. The crime was no longer hidden behind palace walls. The people saw tyranny clearly for the first time. Not as distant policy, but as personal violation. A kingdom that could not protect its families had lost its right to rule. And leaders among the crowd seized the moment. They spoke of justice, dignity, and the limits of obedience. They named the crime openly. They accused the royal house directly. The moral barrier collapsed. Fear no longer controlled the streets. Anger replaced obedience. Rome crossed its point of no return. This was no longer about one king's cruelty. It was about whether any king deserved power at all. The monarchy had committed an unforgivable sin. and the people were ready to answer it. Chapter 4. The Fall of the Tarquin Dynasty. Outrage moved faster than fear ever had. Lucretia's death stripped the monarchy of its last defense. Legitimacy. What had once felt distant and abstract now felt personal, immediate, and unforgivable. The crime of Sextus Tarquin became the crime of the entire royal house. Leadership emerged from within the crowd, and at the center stood Lucius Junius Brutus, a man long underestimated, quietly observing tyranny while protecting himself behind the mask of harmlessness. Brutus understood something crucial. Anger alone could explode, but direction could change history. He raised Lucretia's blood-stained dagger before the people and swore an oath. Never again would Rome tolerate a king. Never again would one family hold absolute power. The crowd answered with thunderous agreement. What began as mourning transformed into mobilization. Citizens armed themselves with whatever they could find. Veterans rallied. Noble families abandoned silence. Messengers spread the call for revolt through streets and villages. Fear collapsed under collective courage. The Senate, sensing the shift, aligned with the uprising. The senators, who had endured years of humiliation, now saw their chance to reclaim dignity and authority. Political hesitation evaporated. The city moved as one body. Tarquin the Proud was away from Rome when the revolt erupted. His absence weakened royal control immediately. Loyal guards hesitated. Orders conflicted. Authority fractured. Sextus fled. Royal supporters disappeared. The palace stood isolated. Brutus and his allies seized control of the city's gates and public spaces. Assemblies gathered openly for the first time in years. Speeches echoed through forums without fear of punishment. Citizens declared the monarchy abolished. When Tarquin attempted to return, Rome closed its doors to him. The people refused entry. The army refused obedience. The city he once ruled rejected him completely. The royal family was expelled, and property was seized. Royal symbols were destroyed. The Tarquin dynasty collapsed not through siege, but through rejection. The monarchy died when the people withdrew consent. This was a revolutionary moment, not merely the removal of a ruler, but the destruction of a political idea. Kingship itself became associated with abuse, humiliation, and danger. The memory of fear burned deeply into Rome's collective identity. Victory did not feel joyful, it felt necessary. Citizens understood the risk of chaos and retaliation, yet preferred uncertainty over submission. They had crossed a psychological threshold that could not be reversed. Rome was no longer a kingdom, but what it would become next remained uncertain. Power now lay in the hands of the people, and the leaders who could organize them. The age of kings had ended. The age of experiment was about to begin. Chapter 5. Destroying the idea of kings. Forever removing the Tarquin family was only the first victory. Rome now faced a deeper question. How could it make sure this never happened again? The people did not merely want a different king. They wanted no king at all. The memory of fear was too fresh, the humiliation too deep, the betrayal too personal. Kingship itself became associated with abuse, silence, and power without limits. Rome responded with something radical. It outlawed the very idea of monarchy. No man would ever again rule alone. No crown would ever again command obedience. No family would ever again inherit absolute power. The word king became a political insult, a warning, a curse. Anyone accused of seeking kingship risked exile or death. This cultural rejection ran deeper than law. Parents taught children to fear tyranny. Stories preserved the cruelty of Tarquin. Public memory became political defense. Rome reshaped its identity around shared power rather than personal rule. Authority was divided intentionally. No single office would dominate. Responsibilities were split. Terms were limited. Decisions required cooperation. This system was imperfect, but it protected against absolute control. Citizens embraced participation. Assemblies gained importance. Public debate returned. Disagreement no longer meant danger. Political competition revived. Freedom felt fragile, but real. Yet destroying kingship also created new challenges. Without a central ruler, leadership became complex. Rival ambitions emerged. Coordination required negotiation rather than command. The Republic would need maturity, patience, and trust to survive. Rome accepted this risk willingly. Better uncertainty than tyranny. Better argument than silence. Better shared responsibility than absolute control. The psychological transformation was enormous. Citizens no longer bowed to a throne. They spoke as stakeholders in their future. Political identity shifted from subject to participant. This rejection of kings planted one of Rome's most powerful values: fear of dictatorship. Ironically, this fear would later shape every crisis the Republic faced. But in this moment, it felt like liberation. Rome had killed the idea of kings. The future now belonged to the people. Chapter 6. A new political experiment begins with the kings expelled and monarchy outlawed. Rome faced an unfamiliar future. There was no throne, no royal family, and no single voice commanding obedience. For the first time in its history, Rome had to govern itself. The city stood in a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. Citizens felt liberated, but also anxious. The old system, however cruel, had provided clear authority. Now power had to be shared, negotiated, balanced, and protected. Rome began constructing something entirely new. Not a kingdom, not a dictatorship, but a republic. A system where authority belonged to the people and their representatives. Leadership was divided deliberately. Instead of one king, Rome created multiple officials who would share responsibility. These leaders were elected, not born into power. Their terms were limited, preventing permanent control. Power was designed to cancel power. One official could restrain another. No single man could dominate the state. So this balance created stability, but also complexity. Decision-making slowed. Debate intensified. Compromise became essential. Rome accepted these difficulties because the alternative, tyranny, was unthinkable. Law replaced royal command. Public assemblies gained real authority. Citizens learned to participate, vote, argue, and influence policy openly. Political identity matured rapidly. Freedom required responsibility. Responsibility required discipline. Discipline required trust. Yet fear of kingship never disappeared. Romans remained deeply suspicious of anyone who appeared too powerful, too popular, or too ambitious. Political culture developed defensive instincts against concentration of authority. This fear would shape every future decision. It would protect the Republic. And someday, it would challenge it. When the birth of the Republic was not perfect. Conflicts remained. Inequality persisted. Power struggles continued. But something fundamental had changed. Rome had proven that tyranny could be resisted, that citizens could overthrow oppression, that political systems could evolve. The age of kings had ended. The age of civic responsibility had begun, and from this fragile experiment would emerge one of the most influential political civilizations in history. But freedom always carries a price, and Rome would soon learn what it truly costs to protect it. Rome shattered its crown. It rejected fear. It outlawed tyranny, and it dared to govern itself. But destroying a king is easier than protecting freedom. The real challenge was only beginning. In the next episode, Birth of the Republic, when Rome killed all its kings. You'll witness how Rome designed a brand new political system, balanced power without a ruler, and laid the foundations of the republic that would shape the world for centuries. If you're enjoying this journey through rebellion, power, and the making of civilization, subscribe to the channel, like this video to support the series, turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Because when a nation kills its kings, history begins again.